Hello and welcome to the Running on Carbs podcast. I am your host, Coach Val, and I would like to welcome you to episode number 64 of the podcast in season number 2. So, welcome today. I would like to share with you today all about carb loading, our favorite thing. I love carb loading, but only for a limited period of time. I get a little tired of it, and I don't know, maybe you do also if you've done it. But there is a right way and a not so right way of carb loading. And today we're going to talk specifically about carb loading for the marathon and even more specifically about carb loading for a marathon while traveling to the marathon. So, if you've been around here for very long, you know that I just finished the Jack and Jill's downhill marathon in Washington State in the United States for my 50th birthday. And so that race was fantastic. Fantastic race all around. And I actually did a recap of the whole race. So if you want to know about the race and you want to know about marathon racing, then jump over to episode number 63, which is the one just before this, where I recapped the entire race. Today, I'm not going to talk about the race really at all. I'm going to talk about the days leading up to the race and what it takes to fuel and carb load ahead of a race like a marathon, and then a little bit about maybe during the marathon, but really this is about carb loading up to the marathon because in episode 63 I did talk about how I fueled during the marathon itself. So here we're going to stop on marathon day right up to the start line. So let's jump into it right now. First off, we are going to talk about carb loading, specifically, like, is it necessary? So let's talk about that first. Okay, gather thoughts, Coach Val. Here we go. Okay, why do we carb load and is it really necessary? It's interesting if you've been around the running scene very long, you might have heard people talk about carb loading not being necessary and that just eating normally is sufficient and maybe just eat a bigger meal of carbs like pasta or something the night before and that should be enough. Um, Not for most people. I mean, you have to be kind of a real special body, I think, and body type to be able to hold enough carbs in your body to sufficiently fuel yourself for a marathon. And then during the marathon, you would have to add carbohydrates in much larger quantities, I would guess, than you would if you were to sufficiently carb load ahead of time and then show up to race day fully topped off and using some of those stores along with replenishing little bits along the way. Ideally, that is a great way to carb load. So when we're running very long distances, we're really tapping into that extended aerobic capacity of our bodies. And the primary energy source during that type of activity is carbohydrates. The process of converting fat to fuel during long bouts of exercise, uh, although it definitely happens at a smaller level, it's too slow to really truly meet the full energy demands of a marathon and what the body is having to put out as far as energy is concerned. And it really equals a very low efficiency. So we really want to rely on the body's primary preferred source, which would be carbohydrates rather than fat in a event such as a marathon. Carbohydrates will convert to glucose, and then that in turn is converted into glycogen, and then the glycogen is stored in both the muscles and the liver. Um, when we are exercising, then the muscles can then convert that glycogen back over to glucose for energy. And I'm not going to get into the science of all of that. It's really too much for what we're doing here. But I think it's important to understand that we're really dealing with glucose and glycogen, and that it's in our muscles and in our liver where it's stored so that it can be used when we need it. And muscles and liver, they could really only store so much, right? I mean, they're little cabinets and you can stuff them as full as possible, but at some point you can't stuff any more in them. So you're limited in how much you can store. And so that's why we try to get to marathon day tapped or topped off, and then replenish and keep those stores as full as possible, as long as possible during the race. It is important to have that maximum reserves built up, and then just to maintain along the way, because we want to try to avoid the depletion of the energy, the glucose in the muscle while we're exercising, while we're doing the run. And typically, if you were to not reserve or not to replenish and you were just to go off of your reserves, then you're looking at hitting a wall between 18 and 22 miles typically. I mean, that's kind of an average. So a marathoner who's not fully topped off, or who is not replenishing appropriately during the run, will often see that it's called the wall. And basically what it is their muscles are just depleted of their energy source. And so there's nothing else to tap into, because the individual can't replenish the glucose fast enough in order for the muscles to recover and keep going. And so they just lose energy. They just cannot go any farther. And then I find that it's necessary, for sure, to carb load. It's good to practice it on your long runs, and it's also important, I think, for race day like marathon. And when you manage it properly, it could really lead to a better race experience as a whole. Also, if you carb load properly and fuel properly during the marathon, then you are light years ahead for your recovery, because now your body isn't in that full 100% depleted mode. You can add more stores quickly after the race and get the muscles recover on the recovery track faster than if you're having to catch up and then add recovery nutrients also. So all in all, beneficial to carb load. Now let's talk about strategy. Okay. I want to back up just a smidge to my very first marathon that I did, where I also carb loaded, and it was my first marathon. So it was also the first time I ever experienced carb loading. I did a lot of things similarly to what I did this time, but with some tweaks that I'll talk about. So previous carb loading experience, logistics were different. So in that first marathon, I drove to the marathon. So I could pack my car with all of the essentials that I needed. If I wanted to bring extra stuff, extra food, whatever I wanted, I could bring a cooler with ice in it and pack everything I needed and haul it to the hotel with me. Because it was so close. It was out of town. It was like another, I think it was an hour and a half away from my hometown. But that's not very far. Your ice isn't even barely melted by then. Also, I had a full kitchen at that hotel. So it was an extended stay type hotel. So there were 2 bedrooms and a kitchen, a full kitchen at that. So I could cook and do whatever I needed to. So I just brought everything I needed with me to the hotel. Super simple. And made logistics for carb loading very consistent. So I planned all my meals. I had all the food that I was eating when I was at home. I didn't have much time to carb load on the road because I just went up there the day before. And it was a lot easier. Compare that to this race. This race, I flew to the race, so I had to get on a plane. A lot harder to bring an ice chest full of ice and all sorts of goodies when you are traveling on a plane. So logistics were really different. I had to get a car rental once I got there. There were a lot of delays. Things just took a lot longer. So my meal timing was also very different. And then once I got the car, so I got to Seattle in this case, I flew into Seattle. And once I got there, I had to rent the car. That took a long time. It was just a slow process. I mean, a sidebar here, they really need to overhaul the process for renting cars in the United States because that took way longer than it should ever take. And it was a full paper process. There's like no automation whatsoever in it. Um, Sidebar. Anyway, back on track. I had to do, once I got my car, I had another 40-minute drive to the hotel. And at the hotel, I did not have a kitchen. And I also did not have a microwave. All I had was a mini fridge when I got to the hotel. So it was just a room with a little mini fridge. So, some carb loading lessons that I learned from previous that I brought into this carb load is the biggest lesson that I took away previously is that I did not drink nearly enough water for the amount of carbs that I was taking in, and also for the endurance event, the race that I was about to run. I did not have nearly enough water. So water was a big deal this time, and I made sure I had plenty. I also jumped up my carbohydrate intake dramatically only for those 3 days ahead of the race that I was carb loading for. So I went from like my normal routine, my normal carbohydrate intake with all the normal foods that I eat, no simple carbohydrates. They were more complex carbohydrates, lots of fiber, all of that. Didn't increase water much. I did a little bit, but not enough. Um, and and then I hit my carb load day. And I like to carb load 3 days ahead of time, so ahead of the race. So I spread it out over 3 days. Some people like two. I prefer three. And and I just started like normal carb load for 3 days. So oof, my body just like went into overdrive. I also insisted on getting all of the carbohydrate grams in, even if I was full. So it led to a lot of overfull feeling and a lot of discomfort and bloating. And it just was not a comfortable experience when I did that the last time. So I knew that going in this time. So what I did is I made some adjustments. Some of the adjustments I made, as I did previously, though, I used a carbohydrate calculator. So both times I went online and I used a calculator that helps you calculate based on your weight, height, age, and the length of your event. And it gives you an estimate of the number of carbohydrates that you should aim for each day during your carb load. And then it also asks you, do you want to carb load over 2 days or 3 days? So I chose three, and that's where I got my numbers from. And this time, I decided to build up incrementally. So I started increasing my overall grams of carbohydrates in my normal diet over about a week and a half prior to the carb loading. And so I would just sequentially each day, or you maybe eat every 2 days or something, add somewhere between 50 and 100 grams of carbohydrates every couple of days. And so when I got to the 3 days prior to the race, I was not all that far off from my carb load goal. And so really I only had to add maybe an extra 100 grams of carbohydrates instead of like doubling or double plus my normal carbohydrates. I also incorporated during that buildup period a little bit more simple carbohydrates as I got closer to my actual 3 day carb load. So maybe a couple days prior, I would add white rice to my stir fry instead of brown rice, for example. So I started incorporating just maybe one or two things a day to get my body more accustomed to those simple carbohydrates. And this is really important when you are plant-based because a plant-based individual is oftentimes taking in higher number of carbohydrates oftentimes than, say, our non-plant based runner counterparts. However, most of the carbohydrates, if you're truly eating a more whole food, plant based, primarily diet, a lot of the carbohydrates you're taking in are going to be more complex carbohydrates rather than these more simple carbohydrates. So it's important to help your body get accustomed to that a little earlier so you don't have, the discomfort of bloating and, the body saying, "What in the world are you, feeding me?" Instead, it'll be like, "Oh yeah, I remember these graham crackers. Okay, yeah, they're okay. A little bit, it's all right." Little does your body know that you're going to, send it all home in just a couple days with a lot of those simple carbohydrates. um, okay, so what else did I do? So I also drank some of my carbohydrate calories. So once a day, again, leading up as I got closer to the rate or to the carb load, the actual 3-day carb load, I started using a Tailwind recovery drink. And that's a really nice way to add carbohydrates, a little bit of protein um, in a drink that's not going to be so filling and help, make you feel over full. So I would just add this Tailwind recovery drink to my afternoon snack, for example. And so that was a nice way of adding what I needed without overfilling my stomach with food. So drink carbohydrates if it is an option for you, and it makes sense for your numbers. I also stopped eating when I was full. I simply didn't, if I didn't get all of the carbohydrates in that day because I was busy or I had meetings or something, then, that day I just didn't. But I didn't, let it throw me off track, and I didn't let it get in my head. I just, picked up on the next meal, and I didn't try to cram 2 meals into the end of the day because, oh, I needed to meet my numbers. Um, and that can be difficult because, we runners are all about, meeting our goals, no matter that be food or miles. um, but sometimes we got to know when to let it go, right? If you're sick and you miss a run, you don't make up the run, you let it go and you go on to the next one. If you are carb loading and you miss a snack or a meal, or you can't eat as much, you go on to the next one. So that's the attitude that I took and incorporated. I also drank way more water than I thought I even needed to. And it was the right amount of water by doing so. Too little water, by the way, with so much carbohydrates, with such a big increase, can lead to constipation and bloating and discomfort. So, definitely make sure that you are adding in the water because that water is going to flush everything out on a regular basis, and you will feel a lot better. It will also help you not feel so bloated. It's interesting how carbohydrates will hold on to the water in your body, but that's not necessarily a good thing. It's not like holding on to the water and helping hydrate you. Instead, it's just holding on to the water and stopping everything. So you want to keep the water coming in and going through the cells and through the body so that you can be well hydrated. Um, so definitely more water than you might think you need. Always drinking water during a carb load. I also started earlier, and adding newer foods earlier helped me to avoid that shock to my system. But I think I kind of touched on that a little bit already. Um, Okay, so I mentioned that I did 3 days, not 2. You do what's best for you and what works for you. 3 days just feels a little gentler on my body than a 2-day carb load, so I prefer that, and like I said, I'm really building up to it, by doing it a little bit like a week before, week and a half before. Um, Carb loading while traveling away from home. Let's talk about some of those ugh, difficulties, those challenges. Um, so I'll tell you what I did, and then we'll talk about some other options. Uh, I had one full carb load day while I was at home still. So, of my 3 days, the first full carb load day, I was home. So that was good. I was able to really calculate the entire day and, looked at how many carbohydrates I was getting. Was I meeting the goal? How much protein? Did I have, too much, too little fat? And I was able to really, really, really hydrate well and to see how my body felt. And I felt great. I just got to eat a lot of food, but it was not like just stuffing myself with food. It was all very calculated as far as like what the food was. And my favorite part is just I got to eat white bagels. So I got white bagels and simply fruit spread. And those are things I just don't normally eat. So it was just kind of like, oh, I get 3 days of treats. I love it. But the first day was good. And then the second day was a travel day. So it was a very early flight. And so I didn't really have time to eat much at home. But what I did was I made my normal protein coffee because I just can't live without it. So I made my protein coffee and drank that while I was getting ready. And then I made my bagel that I just talked about with the almond butter and, no almond butter, sorry. Um, I did a bagel with strawberry fruit spread and a little bit of oat milk butter. Uh, and so that was my breakfast. And I just toasted it, put it together, and then I brought it in a sandwich bag. And then once I was through security and all that fun stuff, then I had a little time to sit and wait for my plane. Then I pulled it out and just ate my breakfast while I was at the airport. And so my breakfast was on track and on plan because I was able to plan it out and bring it with me. Uh, One full day of carb loading was just while I was traveling. I was at the hotel. It was Saturday, and so that one was completely just on my own carb loading that day. And then also my race day meal, I ate in the hotel and brought that along. And I'll tell you how I got that. So here's how I navigated my carb loading process. Number one, mapped out meals. So when you're traveling, map out where you're going. So where are you going to be staying? Is there a grocery store nearby? Are there restaurants nearby? What kind of food do they have? How do the food options measure up for what you're trying to accomplish with your carb load? Do they have foods that will work for that? So look ahead and just do a little bit of digging with the power of the internet. It's really not so hard to do. Also, there's great apps like Happy Cow that are nice. You can plug in the city where you're going and where you're headed to and see what kind of restaurants are available in the area that you're traveling to. Also, while you're traveling, bring your preferred carb load snacks. Snacks are the easiest way to stay on track. So, if you have a snack bar, for example, that you're going to be eating as part of your carb load process, which I think are great, snack bars make great carb load options. Then bring those along, have plenty of them with you. If you're going to do popcorn or something like that, pop some air popcorn, put them in baggies, take them with you. Always keeping in mind if you are traveling by air, which mostly I'm talking about today, that you, number one, have room for them in your travel or your carry-on, and also that you can get through TSA with it. So remember, you're very limited on things like fluids. So if you obviously you're going to want water while you're traveling. So budget for both time and money for buying water when you get through security, because you can't bring a big bottle of water through TSA. You're going to have to buy that once you get through security and are in the airport where the gates are, and then you'll be able to buy some water, and then just get the biggest bottle or 2 bottles of water that you can get, keeping in mind that you're going to have to stand up and go to the bathroom on the airplane probably. So hopefully you planned your seat well. I did not. So I was on a window seat. Um, but that's a whole other story. But anyway, all managed, all good. But plan your seat. I don't know, maybe on a flight like this, you might want the aisle seat this time. um, then once you get to your destination, shop. Like if there's a grocery store nearby, that's like ideal. Go grocery shopping and get your basic items. So make your grocery list before you go of the things that you want. Remember, you're only going to be there for a finite period of time. So you're not going to need a lot of stuff. You're just going to need a few staple basics. And that could be kind of challenging because I know I had some stuff left over, and it was a real challenge getting these things into my luggage because I'm like, I don't want to waste them. So I managed to travel back home with a box of almond milk, the remaining bagels, graham crackers with which amazingly did not crack and break. I don't know how I did that. And what else? I feel like there was something else. Oh yeah, the rest of the Oreo cookies. Because if you caught one of my very, very early episodes of Running on Carbs podcast, you know that I have to have road trip Oreos. And road trip Oreos, I was on the road. Once I flew, then I was on the road. So road trip Oreos count. And so I had to have my road trip Oreos, but I didn't eat them all. So I had to pack them and bring them home somehow. Those did not survive quite as well as the graham crackers, but they all tasted just fine once they got here. It's amazing. All right. Then bring necessary equipment. So if you are going to have a bagel, you're going to need some way to toast that bagel, aren't you? In the hotel where I was staying, they had a little breakfast bar thing downstairs with a bunch of food that is not plant-based, so I wouldn't use it. They did have toasters though, so I suppose I might have been able to use the toaster if I needed to. But I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're not set up yet at 3 o'clock in the morning. So on race day, that might not work. So going back again to one of my earlier episodes, when you're traveling, BYOT, bring your own toaster. And that is what I did. So I have never traveled to a race by plane before. So I've never had to bring my own toaster on a plane. I wasn't really sure how that was going to go over, but I tried it anyway, and it worked. So when I traveled here, I only had this big, like soft side bag. I did not have like a traditional hard side suitcase. I had 2 pieces of luggage. One it was my carry-on, and in my carry-on was all of my race equipment. You know, my clothes, my shoes, my nutrition, my vest, water bottles, anything I needed for race day, I put in my carry-on because I was not going to spend all of this money, all of this time, all of this training to get to my race destination and find my luggage didn't make it. So, one way or the other, I was going to run that marathon and I was going to be prepared. So, I brought all of my gear on the plane with me in my carry-on. And I also had my carry-on snacks, things that I was going to eat while I was on the plane or, whatever, just traveling, waiting for my plane. Then everything else got packed in my bag that I checked. And so I had a toaster in there, and it's not very big. You can get a little cheap toaster from like Walmart. I don't know, I think I spent $8 on it. I think they're maybe 12 now. Everything's gone up in price, right? So cheap toaster, little plastic thing. You don't need much. It's just got to travel with you. So the smaller, the better. And I also brought my camping cookware. So this is just what it sounds like. It's camping cookware. It all folds up and it's in like this little compact bag. But it's a little, like little pots and pans and things like that. And then I also brought a hot plate that is very small as well. And so with the hot plate and the cookware, I could do things like heat up soup, which I did the day of the race after it was over. I just had soup and a bagel in my room for lunch because I just was so wiped out. I did not have any energy to get in the car and go somewhere and find food. So I was really grateful and thankful to have food at the hotel that I could prepare very easily without having to go anywhere. So, very good cookware and a hot plate, important things to have. I also brought just one little set of silverware and my like plastic soup bowl. It's just just a plastic bowl. And then I also brought my shaker bottles and my thermos for my recovery shake that I put in my drop bag. So after the race, I had my recovery shake ready for me that I had brought with me. Uh, Again, this room had no microwave, which is why the cookware was so important and the hot plate. It only had a mini fridge, and I really tried to minimize what I put in the mini fridge because I knew anything that was cold, I wouldn't be able to take with me. I was going to have to consume it or throw it away. So when I got to my hotel, thankfully, where my hotel was located, there's a big chain grocery store right across the street. And so I just went shopping the day that I got there and I picked up all my normal stuff. So I picked up my bagels. I got almond butter, a small container. I got almond milk. I got cereal that I like to eat. So they had my cereal. Um, I got my refrigerated beets. So if you know me again, I love to have red beets with high quality dark balsamic vinegar as part of my pre-run fueling. And so I bought some just refrigerated cooked beets at the grocery store, and I brought my own vinegar because I knew I would be doing that. So I just brought a little container that I sealed up really well so it didn't spill all over my luggage. um, and then I had my vinegar for my beets. And then I also bought that can of soup that I ate that day, and some snacks and some paper towels. I got a little two. I wanted a single roll of paper towels. I only had two, so that I had to, waste $1 on paper towels, but all good. And then I got 3 gallons of water uh, that day. So the 3 gallons of water, that was when I arrived on Friday, and that water was supposed to last me until I left on Monday. It didn't quite make it. I actually ended up stopping and picking up another gallon of water. Um, I should have gotten 4 gallons of water from the beginning. I didn't end up having enough time to drink the full 4th gallon, but had I have had it earlier, I would have. So, um, future note, 4 gallons of water would have been better instead of just 3. So here's some ideas of carb loading foods that you can consider. Of course, always consider your own dietary preferences, your own, allergies, etc., and just whatever you like to eat. So maybe you have your own, but if you are like, I'm clueless to this whole carb loading thing, what kind of foods are eaten when you carb load? I'm going to give you some ideas. These are some of the things I actually ate on this current carb load uh, time. So I ate graham crackers, bagels, plain bagels, fruit spread. That's like 100% fruit spread, apples, snack bars, um, Tailwind recovery drink, bread. Also, I had some vegan sushi when I was home. I like to buy that at Costco. If you have a Costco near you, they have something called kimbap, I think it is, and it's tofu sushi rolls. They're really yummy. Applesauce cups, cereal, white rice, and also used a lot of soy curls for my protein source because soy curls have quite a bit higher carbohydrate count than some of the other protein sources like tofu, which has more fat. So I tried to find protein sources like Um, Not so many beans, like some beans. Instead, I really prefer the soy curls because they're a little bit more processed. And again, the body doesn't have to work so hard to break it down. So they're a little simpler. I don't know if much, but they're not the whole bean. Um, and they make for good meals. Okay, so out of town eating prior to race day. When I got there, of course, I'm traveling, and remember, this is my 50th birthday, so it was kinda like I was in celebration mode. So a lot of my eating centered around celebration, whereas, if I was just traveling for, any other race without a special event around it, I might have been a little more disciplined, but, I think you gotta give it to me. I was turning 50 and I was celebrating. So I wanted to go out for a really nice lunch when I got to Seattle. And I found a restaurant in Seattle called Wayward Vegan. So shout out to Wayward Vegan if you know it. They were, first of all, really friendly, nice place. Not too difficult to get to. Boy, Seattle streets, that's a whole other story. I was trying to avoid the toll roads and ended up on an expressway, and my GPS kept telling me, "Get off on the next exit." I'm like, "I can't. You put me on the expressway. There's no exits." So I was stuck on the expressway for a long time until I could finally get an exit, and finally did. And then, of course, I'm in panic mode going, "Oh my god, was that a toll road? Am I gonna get a big bill?" I don't think it was, so no one sent me a bill yet. Anyway, Wayward Vegan, very yummy food, but, not a health food place, not a health food restaurant. Uh, and I think one of my mistakes was that because I was in celebration mode, I went for, like, the greasy, plant-based burger, but I was so tempted because they have a, vegan blue cheese mushroom burger and fries, and, I mean, I don't eat like this normally, so I had that. So it was delicious, absolutely delicious. I couldn't pick the damn thing up though. I had to cut it and eat it with a fork and a knife, and I probably just looked like some prissy 50-year-old. But it was a mess. It was falling apart. I couldn't eat it, but it was delicious. So I loved it. If you're in Seattle, go to Wayward Vegan and have one of those burgers for me one day, please. It was really good, but I do think it was too much grease. And so I think I paid for it. I thought, being that it was Friday and my race was not until Sunday, that I had enough time to flush it out of my system with all the water I was drinking. But I do think it probably wreaked a little more havoc on my body than I anticipated. So, lesson learned, but I survived. So the dinner, same day, Friday for dinner, I went to a place called Mod Pizza, and that is, I think it's just a chain pizza place where you can tell them your toppings and stuff and what you want on it. Uh, Nothing's particularly fancy or special. My husband sent me a picture of the pizza that he made at home. It looked way better than the pizza that I ate, but oh well. It was carb loading food, and by that point, that's all I was looking for. And they did have vegan cheese, so I was able to get a vegan cheese with veggies on my pizza. And the positive on Friday was that I did keep up on my water intake very well. So I did very good on my water intake and hydration. So Saturday, moving on to Saturday, this was my full day in Washington and carb loading while traveling. So for breakfast, I had cereal in my bowl that I brought with me and my protein coffee. So I brought pre-measured protein and supplement mix that I normally would have at home, and just brewed a cup of coffee, had my shaker bottle, shook it up, and had my normal protein coffee like I'm accustomed to in my room. And then I went out and decided to explore a bit of Snoqualmie, and I went to the falls So if you're from the area, if you're familiar with it, there's the Snoqualmie Falls, which I think used to be some type of um, like energy plant. And it was beautiful. And I just kind of walked around a little bit, tried not to do too much walking, no hiking or anything, but they had beautiful hiking trails. If you ever go and you're not running a race, definitely, it's definitely just a gorgeous area altogether, but trees were beautiful. Um, I was on the hunt though. So after I visited the falls, I had a mission. I was looking for some type of vegan dessert to have a celebration of my birthday with some type of vegan dessert because I was disappointed to find that although the website for the grocery store said that they had a Rubicon blackout chocolate birthday cake, that's not birthday cake, but for me, it's a birthday cake. But they said that they had this vegan chocolate cake. And they also said that they had my favorite Nellie's bar, which is my favorite post run snack. But when I actually got there, I walked around the grocery store 3 different times, and neither one of those things were at the store. So I was on the hunt for actual dessert. And so while I was walking through the adorable downtown Snoqualmie, there was a bake shop called Chickadee. And so I decided, you never know, maybe there's something accidentally vegan in there. So I stopped in and asked the ladies at the front, do you have anything that's not made with eggs or dairy? I'm vegan. And they at first are like, oh, I don't think so. And then another woman came up and said, yeah, we do. Actually, we have the apple turnovers. There's no dairy in the or egg in the apple turnover. So I went, great. So I got an apple turnover, took that with me, decided I wasn't going to eat it then. I was going to eat it later. And because my primary goal was actually lunch, and I was going to a place called the Black Dog Arts Cafe. And that is an adorable little cafe. If you're ever there, you have to stop there because, number one, if you're there, it's the only fully vegan restaurant that I saw and was aware of. So you definitely have to go because it's easy, right? Everything is vegan. Um, and so I went there for lunch, and I had a sandwich because that is a very good carb loading type meal. And their bread is homemade. It was absolutely delicious. So I just had something called the Georgia, and it was greens, like I think they were mostly like baby spinach, cucumber, avocado, and then a cream cheese, a vegan cream cheese spread, and some chips on the side. So simple, simple, basic lunch. But then the greatest part is they had vegan brownie. And so I I trusted them more than I trusted Chickadee. So I'm like, if I'm going to eat this tonight, I'm going to eat the vegan brownie because I'm much more comfortable and feel assured that that truly is vegan. The Chickadee one, I believe them. I will eat that, but I'm going to save that for after the race just in case. So that's what I did. So I had a vegan brownie, and then I saved the apple turnover for travel day after the race. Um, then for dinner, I had a very normal meal that I'm very accustomed to. I went to the nearby town, whose name I cannot pronounce, and got Chipotle. And so I just had a Chipotle veggie bowl with beans and white rice instead of brown. Um, and that was my pre-race dinner, was a bean and rice bowl. So pasta I know is very traditional, but I wasn't finding any pasta. And like I said, I'm very accustomed to Chipotle. So that's kind of my go-to meal when I'm out of town. And so I felt good about, incorporating Chipotle as a night before meal. And so that's what I had. Um, so while traveling, counting macros and really making sure that you're hitting the exact numbers that you saw on that carb load calculator can be like more than challenging, if it's possible at all. So I really only counted and calculated my carbohydrate grams the weeks leading up to the carb load and leading up to the marathon. And then the one full day that I was home and able to carb load at home, because it's just too difficult. I mean, I don't even know if it's really possible to carb load and really know the numbers that I'm getting based on the eating program I just outlined for you. I don't know how I'd calculate a sandwich with homemade bread. I don't know. So while I was traveling, I tried to make meal choices that would maximize those simple carbohydrates that I was going for, that I knew my body would be able to use and store for race day. So really, it was just more about making specific choices. So, like the sandwich for lunch, instead of getting a salad, like I would on my normal routine, or the pizza and rice and bean bowl for dinner instead of something else. I also drank more water constantly, just constantly drinking water the entire time. I did not hit up any Starbucks while I was traveling before. The only coffee that I had, or any caffeine at all, the only caffeine I had was the one morning cup of my protein coffee, and that was it. And the rest of the day was purely hydration with water. And then the day before the marathon, I had, I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 bottles of element electrolytes. So I would again have a good solid base of electrolytes and make sure that my body was truly absorbing all of the hydration that I was taking in. So here's my takeaways. So after all of that, we get, up to race day. And by the way, race day morning was my normal race day breakfast. So I had a plain bagel, almond butter, my beets, I had my protein coffee, and that was it. And I was good. I mean, it was super early in the morning, so I wasn't really, very, very hungry. That was absolutely enough, a sufficient amount of food. And I was not hungry during the race or before. I took one Huma gel about 15 minutes before start time. And then the rest of my fueling, you can go back to episode number 63 and hear how I fueled all through the marathon. But that's how I started off my morning. Okay, so let's talk about some takeaways and what you can do when you are getting ready to carb load for your next marathon. Hopefully, you've gotten a lot out of this so far. And so I'm just going to run down a couple of highlights. First off, if you didn't get the message already, maintain your water intake and drink a lot of water. And then maybe the day before, add a little bit of electrolytes as well, if that's something that you're used to. Bring your hotel cooking gear, whatever that might be. If you got a hot plate, I highly recommend it. If you do get a hot plate, make sure that you turn it on and burn off all the smell and the stink before you travel with it. Because once you're in the hotel, those suckers get hot. And I was so worried that I was going to set off a smoke alarm. So, and they kind of smoke a little bit too because of the chemicals that they're made with. So definitely turn that on and burn off all the chemicals and yucky smell and all of the smoke before you travel with it for the first time. So just like insider tip there. And also don't forget things like, your plastic bowl or whatever you might need. You got to kind of think your whole trip up at front and then write everything down. Grocery shop for your essentials once you get there. Or if you can't grocery shop, a lot of grocery stores in big cities will deliver to the hotel. So set up an account and have your groceries all set up and have them delivered once you get into town. Again, make simple carb-heavy meal choices when faced with a menu, looking for those simple carbohydrates for your carb loading days. And then research nearby eateries and restaurants that have plant based options. Obviously, plant based limits you a little bit as far as potential restaurants and choices. So you may actually need to call ahead on some of these. So if there's an Italian restaurant that you want to go to, you might want to call ahead and ask them about their vegan options, or if they use, certain ingredients like Parmesan in their sauces and things like that. So you have an idea of what to expect and if that's a good option for you, or if you're going to have to make certain requests or accommodations once you get there. And then stick to foods that you're most familiar with. So foods and meals that you've had before, like me and my Chipotle. I'm used to it. My body knows what to do with Chipotle. If you've got a place that you are accustomed to eating, then and that is a good choice for your carb loading, then go there if that's available. All right. That is my episode for you today. Those are my tips. That is how I carb loaded for my marathon, my 50th birthday marathon. And I did not hit any walls during the marathon. Spoiler alert if you haven't listened to episode 63. So this time, I think things went really well. I have a much better plan for the next marathon that I do because I can see things that went right and just, I'll make a couple more minor tweaks to my carb loading and fueling for the next one because we're always learning and we can always do a little bit better each time. So get out there and start carb loading. And I hope that your next marathon goes great and that you are well fueled and on the way to recovery before you even hit the start line. And I'd love to hear your carb loading ideas and what you do. If you have any tips, tricks, or special little tweaks that you do to carb load for your races, I would love to hear them. So jump over to Instagram or Facebook if you're on social media, or drop a comment on the YouTube video if you're on YouTube, because I want to hear what your tips are because I might want to incorporate them. And I love when we as runners, especially plant-based runners, can share with each other how we accomplish the things that we do and stay fueled on plants. So anyway, Instagram, running.on.carbs. All the links are in the show notes. Join me over there, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. And don't forget, run your best life on carbs. I'm Coach Val, and I will see you in the next episode. Have a good one. Bye.